Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. I have Chief Tokajer. He has 45 years experience in law enforcement. He's currently the chief of police for Holmes Beach PD. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So welcome to the show, Chief Tokajer. Thank you so much for being here.
And thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Of course, I'm looking forward to it as well. I would love if you could give us a little bit of background on you. Anything that you want to share about yourself personally, about your career for anyone who doesn't know who you are.
I started in the Army Military Police in 1979. Went to Sarasota Sheriff's Department from there for a couple of years. Then I did 26 years at City of Bradenton, retired as their deputy chief, worked in every area from canine supervision of canine and narcotics, and did a lot of work with the community policing and what we called back then a crime reduction team. I was a SWAT team and SWAT team leader for a while and supervision of SWAT teams. So I've done considerable amount of policing in Bradenton. After 26 years, I retired from there, went to Longboat Key for 2 years as their assistant to the chief there. And then I've been the chief here. I'm on my 13th year at Holmes Beach. It's been a great progression through my career. I told my wife when we got married in 1981 that my intent was to be a police officer and a police chief in the future, so that she knew what she was getting into. And we've been married this year. Next month it'll be 44 years that
Wow.
we've been married. We have two daughters, two great son-in-laws, and six grandchildren.
I love
So
that.
I've got a blessed life, to be honest with you.
Thank you for sharing. I love that you set expectations for yourself and for your family early. And you said, these are the goals, these are the things that I want to achieve professionally. And then you did it. And I'm curious to know because I just had an interaction with a younger officer recently. He was brand new, maybe like only a year or two on the job. And we were having a conversation, and his attitude was kind of like, well, I don't need to worry about those things. Like, I don't really need to think about the future because I have so much time. Do you feel like time went by really fast, or what is your like experience with that? Because I have my own personal opinions, when you hear like younger people and you're like, man, I wish you would learn from me. But he was like, yeah, that's so far ahead. I don't even have to think about it yet.
Yeah, definitely. Time flies. I can't believe it's been 45 years of policing. I can't believe that I've been here for 13 years with Holmes Beach. This has been a great place to work. I've got another 2 years and a couple months before I fully retire. Uh, but my word to the young is to stick with your agency. Go find a place that feels like home to you and stay there, because at the end of it, you get a pension. I've been getting my pension from the city of Bradenton since 2011 when I retired from there. And you work towards goals, and you want to have opportunity for you to have a future with your family and to be able to do things after law enforcement. Law enforcement, you know, you can't do it forever. Like I said, 45 years is a long time, but I've already set my goals as to when I fully plan to retire. And that's in motion. Uh, and we plan to do some traveling and do some of the things that we couldn't do with the working every holiday and every weekend and as you come up through the ranks.
Yeah. Well, and I also think it's never too early to start preparing for the future. And when I was really young, I didn't have foresight either, and I wish that I would have, looking back, I wish that I was proactive with certain things. I wish that I would have set myself up and I had, those goals and those things that I wanted to achieve. And that I knew, to invest my money and different things that I think that, now obviously it's a part of the conversation, especially in your profession, talking about all these different wellness pillars and being proactive. But I agree with you. I think that time goes faster than we like it to sometimes. And it's never too early to start being proactive and setting yourself up for future success. I have a saying that I really like, and it didn't come from me. I don't know who it came from, but I definitely stole it from somebody. But it said, do things today that are going to make your future self proud. And I really
Boy,
like that.
that's great. I like that. I tell people all the time to, make sure that whatever you do, whatever you say, that it doesn't end up at the headlines of the Braden and Herald, that your family gets embarrassed when they read.
Mhm.
You got to look at what you're doing, what you're saying, and like you said, prepare for your future. And we try to tell our younger officers to, invest in their own 401, not just the police pension, but their own 401. Make sure that they have things set up with life insurance should something happen to them, that they're not just relying on the little bit that they get from the police department, that they have to make sure that their family is set should something happen to them so that they could pay their mortgage and things like that. It's important that they look at that and look at the whole scope of things. In 1990, on my youngest daughter's third birthday, I was shot in the line of duty.
Oh, wow.
And, things like that, they make you look at the big picture, that this could have ended a lot differently. Went into my arm, out of my arm and into my chest on the left side. And, my wife knew, like I told you, that I was going to be a police officer for my career. And she told me, she says, Bill, I know you're going back to work, but can you get a better vest? Because at the time, in 1990, we had a vest that, was issued that had a front panel and a back panel, but it didn't have the side panels. So I bought a better vest and she was happy and went back to work and here I am.
I do want to talk about your family for a moment. 44 years, almost 44 years of marriage, a
Yes.
beautiful family, extended family, your grandpa, you have, son-in-laws, you said. And what is the secret? What is the secret to a long and successful marriage, especially in this career? And what is the secret to having a successful family?
One, have a good firm foundation in the Lord and God. That gives you your foundation to start on. If you don't have that solid foundation, nothing you build on that will be able to withstand time. Make sure you never go to bed angry. Always talk things out, and remember that your wife, your partner, is there for you, and you should communicate with them. If you have a bad day, you had something that happened that was traumatic at work, let them know. Uh, don't keep it bottled up inside. That'll just eat you up. And don't go to, trying other things like alcohol. If you want to stress release, go for a run, go for, hit the treadmill, hit the elliptical, work out with some weights, do something for yourself to actually manage that stress instead of, going to other devices.
I really like that you talked about building a foundation and a team environment. I agree with you. I think that that is the core to success is how can you create a foundation? How can you continue to be a team and do things that are connective and not divisive? And what you said about communicating, that's connective, right?
Yeah.
Escaping, numbing, avoiding, that's divisive. That's going to
Yes.
divide you. And unfortunately, I think that the things that disconnect us are easier. It's the easier way out. Maybe it's easier to not communicate your feelings to someone. It's easier to not talk about a hard day when you have a hard day. You just want to kind of forget about it or push it down. It's easier to turn to alcohol or escaping or avoiding or numbing. Those things are easier. The harder thing is to sit with it. The harder thing is to, choose healthy coping mechanisms to process the things. The harder thing is to have those conversations. And so I find it to be really interesting. It's almost like this reverse psychology. It's really interesting that some of the things that are the hardest are viewed as being the weakest, which
That's
is
right.
really interesting to me because I'm like, no, like those hard things take the most amount of courage, strength. The easy things, like that's the weakness. Avoiding by getting wasted every night, that's weakness. It's not strength. So it's really interesting to me.
That's correct. And you got to always put your health as your priority. You know, and communicating that to your spouse, to friends, and friends outside of law enforcement. If every friend that you have, you talk in 10 codes, then you need to get some other friends.
Mm,
You shouldn't be, on the job 24/7 with your personal life as well as when you're working. When you're working, you're working, you staying, focused, running and gunning, doing what needs to be done. But when you're off, you should, be able to disconnect from the job. Even as a police chief, even though I'm, always on call, okay, always waiting for a phone call, I've got to find time for myself and for my family.
yeah. Yeah, I think I've had a lot of conversations over time and I'm guilty of this too. And I've had to kind of check myself where, people ask you about yourself and rather than, talking about who you are and your interests and your family and all of these things that are really important, we immediately start talking about what we do rather than who we are. And I think if you don't have outside hobbies, interests, if you don't have connections with other people, then you don't have anything else that you can talk about. Your job is all consuming. And again, I have done this in my career before where I didn't have anything else. My life was 24/7 my career and I didn't know who I was. There wasn't a separation between work page and page, and I've had to work really hard to have that disconnect, even though I think what I do is really important. I love what I do and I give it my all when I'm there. I do agree that it's really important to have who you are beneath all of that as a separate side of the coin.
Right. When you're with your family, be present,
Mhm.
put your phone down, have actual conversations. I know that our younger generation, they're so used to doing things on their cell phones and don't have the interpersonal skills that we were raised on, where you went outside at the end of the day and you played, ball outside. Now everybody's on their phone. Even when I interview people, I notice that sometimes they're like looking at their hands instead of at me as if they're trying to communicate by text.
Interesting.
So it's a different world with the younger generation that's coming up. I have the blessing of being able to hire in people that are already experienced here. I don't have to hire right out the box out of the academy. So I get to hire people that have some experience. I can be picky and choosy we have a smaller agency. We have 20 sworn people, and we pay well. We have great equipment and a great atmosphere. So, I don't have a lot of turnover. I've only had, I think it's two officers that left to go to other agencies, and one went to a federal agency, and one was a very young guy and he wanted more action. So he went to a larger agency.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel really grateful for the opportunities that I had to get dirty and run around. And like the only concept of time was when the street lights came on, and you knew you had to be home when the street lights came on, or else you were in big trouble, And I had a cell phone in high school, but it was very basic. It was for emergencies only. We didn't text, we didn't have social media. It was just like if something goes bad, you have like a couple phone numbers in there and that was it. And half the time it was dead, And so I feel really
Right. You had to
grateful for
remember
that.
phone numbers back then. You had to remember your different phone numbers. Now,
Yeah,
nobody remembers phone numbers. It's in my phone. I don't have to remember that.
100%. And this is really going to age me. I think about this all the time. We didn't have Ubers. And so we had to know the cab company's phone numbers, and
Right.
you had to go to a payphone and call the cab company and hope that they showed up. And if they
Right.
didn't show up, you had to call them again and you had to wait, and this was like my early 20s, So like it's
And you had to
interesting.
have money. You had to have cash, which is
Exactly.
great.
That's so funny. Um, but I've definitely had my moments where, I have too also been scrolling on social media, and you blink and you wake up, because I do feel it's like this sleep stage, and you kind of like wake up and you're like, I just wasted an hour of my life and I didn't benefit at all. So I've actually taken my Instagram off my phone, and I have it only on my computer. So it gives me the opportunity to be present and to not feel that like addiction to my phone or feel like I need to pass time scrolling. That's been a big help. And I know that, some people, especially if there's younger people who are listening to this, that might feel like anxiety to take it off your phone. But as I get older, I do recognize the importance of connection and giving yourself the space to be bored. Give yourself the space to be creative. Give yourself the space to just think and be. We don't have to be distracted all the time. And in fact, I would actually argue that we should be more present than distracted, right? We should, if we don't have anything to do, we don't always have to fill that time. We can sit with
That's
our feelings, we can sit with ourselves, we can sit with our family. So I appreciate those words
break
of
out a book
wisdom.
instead of a screen, look at a book.
100%.
There's so much more that you can do than just looking at your phone. I don't have any social media other than the police departments. And I have my sergeants and lieutenant that monitor that. I don't go on social media. I don't do any of the TikTok and any of that stuff. I have uh, no social media presence, and I try to tell our young guys to remember that whatever they put out there is out there forever.
Forever.
You
Yeah.
have to make good decisions. There's consequences for things that you do and say, and you see that nationally now, where you see things that are brought up that people had tweeted it or posted on Facebook or one of the other methods out there that 20 years later is coming back to haunt them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also brings me to, kind of a topic that we had talked about offline in the context of wellness. Of course, we talked about escaping and avoiding and numbing, which I think social media does that. But we also talked about the challenges that you have in your profession when it comes to certain things. One of those things was sleep. And when we talk about sleep, we know that scrolling, being on a screen before you go to bed is really bad for your sleep. Alcohol, really bad for your sleep. There's certain things that we know just completely thrash your sleep. And so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about shift work and the impact that that has, not just on sleep, but also nutrition. And, maybe some of the solutions or the tactical things that we can do to counteract that. So what is your experience with how shift work impacts wellness?
One of the things is your nutrition. Uh, there's not a lot of options on a midnight shift for where you can eat. So if you're doing things the right way and you want to take care of yourself, you have to do meal prep, and you have to make sure that you bring food with you that is of good nutritional value, so that you're not stopping at 7-Eleven and having a hot dog, or Dunkin' Donuts and having a donut. The things that are open at night are not going to be of the same nutritional value as if you did meal prep. So what I always did was, whenever I cooked a meal for the family, I would make leftovers so that I could have lunches for another couple days going forward, to bring with me. Bring good snacks with you, some like pistachios, something that's got nutritional value to it, instead of just potato chips, or something along those lines. You want to have something that's going to be better for you, some good protein. Make sure that you have stay hydrated. That's very important, to stay hydrated and to not be drinking the energy drinks, because that's just going to get your blood pressure up, and that's could make where you make some bad decisions. It's very good that you have to get your sleep at night. You have to put the screens down like an hour before you go to bed, just to get your mind right, ready to go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. On the nutrition, I saw this video recently, and it wasn't in the context of law enforcement. It was in the context of our country, just an overarching statement. And they said that there's new research that just came out that showed that food is the number one leading cause of death in our country. And I thought that that statement, and I haven't done my own independent research on it, so, don't quote me. I'm just repeating something that I saw, but it seemed like it was a credible source. And I think that food is so important for a lot of things. It's important for our energy, our decision making. It does impact our mental health, our physical health, and it does impact our sleep as well. And so I always tell people, because I think that food is a sensitive topic. I think that people are really protective of their food and what they like to eat. They're like, don't tell me to not drink my energy drink. Don't tell me to not eat, the hot dog. And what I like to do in my strategy, and, I'd love your opinion on this as well, but I try to just meet people where they are. I think something is better than nothing. And if we can start making healthier options, like maybe we start with, if you are going to eat at the gas station, maybe instead of that hot dog, we try this. Maybe instead of that, maybe instead of three energy drinks, we do two. Maybe instead of,
Small changes, small changes in what you're
exactly.
doing.
And
So
then
it's
when
easier
you,
to balance.
100%. And then when you start feeling better, because you will, when you start making those little incremental changes in your life, then you're going to want more of that. When you start to feel good, you're like, wow, I want to feel like this all the time. I don't want to crash and feel terrible midway through because I spiked my blood sugar and now I'm coming down. I don't want to feel lethargic all the time. And so when you start to feel better, I think then it compounds over time and you start to make better decisions over time. And I agree with you. I think best case scenario is if you can bring your own food and you can have those on the go. But for anyone who's maybe resistant to that, how can we just start with little small incremental changes and then build on that?
Right. And when we do stuff here at my police department, we during day shift, everybody comes in at the same time and we all eat lunch together. So everybody knows what they're doing and what they're eating and, taking, having that chance to, to depressurize from what's going on the street. And we do that as a group. And I know that my night shift guys, they also do that and come in at the same time and everybody sits down we have a nice little kitchen area. Everybody gets to come in and eat, and if there's a call for service, then they go out and they handle it from the lunch break.
Yeah, that's nice. And I'm guessing it also builds community. It builds a little bit of accountability too, because if everyone's eating healthy and you come in and you're eating candy, the other thing I want to talk about is sleep. And you mentioned a couple things that I really appreciated. And I was just kind of going through sleep hygiene checklists recently. And, there are a lot of things that you can do. But one of the things you said, turn off all screens an hour if you can, at least 30 minutes beforehand to, like you said, be able to unwind so you're not so stimulated. We know that if your mind is stimulated, it's really hard to sleep, right? So it's
Right.
like such a simple thing.
Overthinking everything that has gone on during the day and worrying
Yeah.
about what you have to do tomorrow. And
Yeah. Yeah. And then some of the other things that I really like is, one, make it really dark in your room if you can. Turn down the temperature, make it colder. If you can, make your room only for sleeping, like that's your sleep space, not having a
exactly.
TV in there. Those things help too. And then, of course, breathing techniques or, there's sleep sounds. There's a lot of different things that you can kind of do to regulate your nervous system, calm your mind before you go to sleep. But yeah, no screens, make it colder, make it darker, and
Right.
then see if you can try to regulate your nervous system beforehand, because everyone can relate to this. If your mind is racing, you're not going to sleep. And if you do
Right.
sleep, you're going to wake up in the middle of the night because your mind is racing. So how can we quiet the mind through nervous system regulation before we go to bed? And that'll help. Because the reality is, and we talked about this before, like you may not be able to get 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours of sleep. You might be working night shift and then you also have a family and you have to get up and you have to go to the soccer game or whatever that is. And so while we might not be able to control the length of time that you get working shift work, we can control the quality of sleep that you get. So we can maximize the hours that you do have.
I agree.
I wanted to talk a little bit about something that you said earlier. So, you talked about your passion for community policing. I wanted to talk a little bit on that topic and why that's so important to you.
You have to have the buy-in from your community from what you're doing. We have just put up some speed cameras in our school zones. So we have one school, so we have one little area that has speed zones, but we had meetings with the community. We brought this up at commission meetings. We had discussions with them to show them the magnitude of what was going on and how many people were speeding. So you get buy-in from the community for that. So everything that you do in the community, you want to try and get buy-in. You want to have that open communication. One of the things that I did when I first got here to branch out to the community was I met with our local newspaper editor out here and at the Islander, and I had communications with them and told them that I was going to be enacting high visibility proactive policing, and that's going to be different from the policing that was done before I got here. And I said, you're going to see that there'll be more arrests, there's going to be more traffic stops, things like that. And the editor told me, well, it's like, I don't know that that's a good thing. I said, well, give me, 2 months to show you some statistics of what comes out of those traffic stops. And I met with her in 2 months and told her, gave her the statistics of the people that were arrested that had warrants for their arrest that were coming through our community. Showed her all the numbers of the arrest and the good arrests that were made from merely a traffic stop. And she says, your way is working. It's good. It's like there were like in the old days, they used to give somebody that was pulled over for being drunk, they'd give them a ride home because they lived on the island. And I told them those days are over because if I give you a ride home and then you get back in the car, then I'm liable for anything that happens to you. And if you kill somebody, then that's on me for not doing my job, my officers for not doing their job by taking you to jail and making you learn your lesson for what you're doing. So just because you're an islander doesn't mean that you're going to get a break.
Yeah.
It's like we have a job to do and we're going to reduce crime. The years before I got here, we had very low UCR crimes, between 150 and 200 UCR crimes, which are the burglaries, the robberies, the murders, things like that, the high-end crimes, the high-level crimes. And last year, we're down to 34 UCR crimes. And
Wow.
that's because we're out there in the community. We're out there. We do what's called the house check program. If you go on vacation, you come and tell us that you're going on vacation. You give us, $20 and we'll come and check your house at least once a week. My officers do a thorough walk around the house to make sure that uh, not just that it hasn't been broken into, but there's no problems in the house. We've walked around and found water lines that have been damaged, things like that that have affected the house, and we're able to shut the water. Pool pumps. People that are gone for a couple months that leave stuff running. So we're able to do a check for them, and that's benefits our community, and it's something that we can do because we are a small community where larger communities probably can't do that type of community policing outreach. um, we do, the coffee with a cop. We go to the elementary school and we have lunch with the kids. We do an ice cream with the kids. We do a Chiefs night out where every year we have in our city field, we have bounce houses and we give away food free. The entire event is free. We have all the vendors out here that come out and they provide food for it. We get donations for the bounce houses and and a whole bunch of toys. We give away probably 150 bicycles that were all donated, and all kinds of toys and stuff, right before Christmas time. This year we're doing it a little different because it's the city's 75th anniversary. So instead of having the Chiefs night, we're having a full-on city's 75th anniversary party.
I love that. There are a few things in there that you said that I really liked. And one is holding everyone to the same standard. And someone told me, and I agree with this, that when you set the standard, people will rise to that level. If you don't have the standard, people aren't going to rise to that level, right? And so, to your point, everyone is held to the same standard. No one is getting like special treatment, getting ride homes. Everyone is held to that standard, and everyone will then rise to that standard. I also really wish that we had a home check-in program where I live. I've never heard that before. And maybe anyone who's listening who, is in leadership or works for a smaller agency and community could implement something like that, because everything that you said to me sounds like you build connections, you build trust, you build buy-in within the community, and that helps to reduce crime. That helps to build morale and support for law enforcement and the community. It's a partnership. And then I would also imagine, and I would love your opinion on this, I would also imagine that that helps with the overall wellness of the officers as well, because now they're having these meaningful connections within the community where they feel like they're actually helping people. People are waving, saying hi. You're able to give back to the community and give bikes and all the stuff that you guys are doing. Do you think that that helps with wellness? And do you think that that helps with the future of law enforcement?
Yes, it does. And like you said, holding everybody to the same standard, I do that with my officers as well.
Mm,
I my first communication with them when they come on is that, one, you never lie to me, because if you lie to me, you're automatically terminated, and there's no way back. If I can't trust you to tell me the truth on the little things, then how can I trust you to, carry a gun and take away people's freedoms?
mm,
It's important to me that everybody be, honest in every communication that they have with me. Holding them to the standard where, they're coming to work for me, they're going to actually have to be proactive and be out there and be pulling people over and be having communications and being out in the community on the four-wheelers, on the side-by-sides, meeting people on the beach, having communications, open communications with people. All that is very important, and everybody's held to the same standard, as an officer as well.
yeah, no, I like that. And we talk a lot about culture, and I've heard this before where, people are like, well, this person gets away with this or that person gets away with that, and then there becomes this resentment within the agency. And so having a culture where everyone is held to the same standard, everyone knows what that standard is, and, they're all in it together and there's no special treatment. I think that does help long term.
I agree.
You had, as a community and as an agency, two back to back hurricanes recently. And I would love if you could walk us through what happened. And I know you also, do a presentation on this for Police Chiefs Association. So, what happened and how did you guys get through that?
So we had three back to back.
Oh,
We
wow.
had first there was Debbie that came through, and that one was a rain event. So all that did was flood some streets, and it wasn't uh, traumatic to my island, but to our community in Manatee County, out in the county area, in the rural areas. They had extreme flooding. They had a dam that overflowed. So there was a lot of problems out in the county that we didn't have here. But that was the first hurricane that came through, and then we had Adelia that came through, and Adelia came through, or Helene came through, I'm sorry. And Helene was a huge event. It came through, that was 100 miles offshore, but the entire island was covered with 3 to 4 feet of water. Or came from the bay side, came from the Gulf side, and it just covered our entire island and devastated all of our single family homes and all of our ground floor businesses. They all had 3 to 4 feet of water and sand inside their businesses. And you got to remember, this is not, all clean water that's coming in because it comes from the bay side, comes from the Gulf side. And as it comes in, it goes into the sewage systems, and then you have all of that overflowing as well. And that was all in these homes. So, uh, and I tell people all the time, the biggest mistake I made as a police chief was not leaving the island and having my people, my officers leave the island before Helene, got to our area and it got that bad. We were not expecting the water to rise as much as that. We were expecting it to be the same height or similar to Adalia, which stayed about 3 feet away from the police department. But this water was, we had 36 inches of water in our garage at the police department garage. It didn't get into our main building because we're up a little higher, but it was up to like the fourth and fifth step on the stairs getting to the main building. But as we saw the water coming up, we were going to try and move our vehicles to higher ground. And we just didn't have the time. The water rose so quickly. We had 3 feet of water on the roads, so we couldn't even get 2 blocks over to the fire department to higher ground to put our cars there. So we lost, like 10 vehicles that got damaged during the storm. Um, but all of my people were stuck here in the building, couldn't leave then. So they couldn't get to their families, and it was, traumatic to them and to me. And that was a mistake that I made. And I told them that that would never happen again. And then once people got out to the island after, we cleared the island, making sure that everything was safe. Once the water receded, we made sure the power lines, we put up barricades wherever power lines were down. Um, Helene was not a tremendous wind event for us, but the damage that was done, everybody was having to cut out their drywall and put it at the end of the street for being cleaned up. All of their possessions, everything that was ground level, uh, bedding, clothes, keepsakes, everything was at the front yard, waiting to be picked up, as debris and taken to a debris hauling site. So this was traumatic to the community, traumatic to my officers to see this. And 10 days later, we have Milton coming. And Milton was a wind event, and we had little tornadoes that came through, and we had people that lost roofs. And here we told everybody, put all of your debris and everything at the front yard right outside of the street. And then here we have another storm coming in, and we were worried that all of that was going to be flying debris now,
Mm,
because there was just no way to get it all picked up, in that short span of time. We had the state come in, FDOT came in and helped us keep all of the stuff that was on our main roads, our evacuation route. We made sure that they picked up everything that was on that route so that when we came back out to the island, we would have less to clear off. But with Helene, it was so bad that when we're come to the island, we had to have a plow truck come in, and they plowed the sand off the road, and it looked like you were in Michigan, with a one-lane road that had snow on both sides of it that was plowed off. We had mountains of snow on it, or sand on every road that looked like you were up north. It was truly devastating for this community and the damage that was done. Um, Milton came through. Milton was a wind event, took off a lot of roofs, took out a lot of debris. People that had already, cleaned their houses out, had to go back in a second time and take, more stuff out. So it was, for a small agency, I knew right after Helene that we were going to need help. So I reached out to the Florida Police Chiefs Association, and they said, "What do you need?" And I said, "I need 15 people to help me during the day, 15 at night." So I got a call from the police chief from Panama City. He had been through hurricanes. His name is Chief Smith. He called me and he's like, "Bill," he's like, "as soon as Milton's winds die down, we'll be there." and he brought a group of 30 people down here from his area and set up a base camp in our field right next to the police department. And overall, we had 32 different police departments that came down and helped us in a 3-month period until we were able to sustain and handle the policing ourselves. We had checkpoints that were set up. Here again, as a small community and on an island, there's only two ways on our island. So we were able to put checkpoints at both of those locations and make sure that only the people that were coming out here needed to be out here. We didn't have the looting that they had in other areas because we were checking to make sure it was only residents and business owners and people that were truly coming out here to work were out here. So, that was something that worked out well for us. Another thing that we learned was words matter. So originally we said that there would be a 7 p.m. curfew when we intended it to be not a curfew where you had to everybody leave the island, but that if you're coming back out on the island, you had to be a resident. We weren't letting workers back out after 7 p.m. So we changed it to from curfew to checkpoint after the first couple days when we realized that every road was full of people trying to leave the island because they thought they had to be off the island by
Mhm.
7 o'clock. So homeowners that were doing work and things like that. So we had to get that messaging out to them that, hey, you can keep working as long as you guys want to. It's just that when you want to come back to the island, if you leave the island, you have to be a resident. You have to have one of our hang tags that shows that you're already vetted as a resident to come back out on the island. So, you learned it. Words matter as to what you say. So checkpoint, not curfew.
Yeah, I was getting a little emotional because I can't even imagine what that felt like. Losing everything that you own, not knowing if your family is okay, not being able to reach them. I can only imagine. Um, I also thought that it was really beautiful that in a time of need, you came together with other agencies to help and that they helped you. And I think it's a really important reminder that even though as agencies, I think sometimes it feels like you're all separate and kind of on your own islands, no pun intended with that one, but you are a family and in the hard times, you're there for each other. I think that was one of the things that like kind of choked me up a little bit too, because how beautiful. Um, how do you, as a leader, but also as a human being, how do you process that? And what is the aftermath? How do you get through that from maybe a wellness perspective? How do you overcome such a tragic event, not just as a leader, but also as a human?
Well, seeing the community come together is one thing that was very helpful. Uh, Going house to house. I was out here, my guys were out here. We were bringing water to people as they're working outside and trying to clean their stuff up. We got meals brought in, so we were able to bring some meals to people. So it wasn't just policing, but it was more holistic, trying to help out everybody with every need that they had. We had the cut team from the Panama City that actually came in with their like we have for a first in team for a hurricane where we clear all the streets. Well, they had that when they got here and they went to the residents out here and they said, hey, you got trees down, we're here to help. And instead of them having to pay to get some trees cut up, they were out there with their chainsaws and getting everything taken care of for the community, which is great. But every time that I did a news report, because I had people coming from all over. We had the British BBC News, we had Sky News. Everybody was coming here and wanted to talk, and it was very emotional for me to show them the devastation and drive them through the community and show them the mountains of people's belongings as you're driving down the road. Everything that they own is at the curb. It was just, heartbreaking. There was more than one time when I just went home and cried. Uh, that, this is a community I love, and I know that they love their police department. So to see them devastated in such a way, and to see them with everything that they own being, out on their front lawn, and, you had people that would come through during the day, after we stopped having the checkpoints during the day and only had them at night, and they'd be trying to scavenge from people's lives. And it's like we just wouldn't allow that to happen. So any time that we saw that, or anybody called us and said, "Hey, there's people picking through my stuff at the front end," we would go and get them and tell them they had to leave the island. This is, you can't go through people's lives like that. This is, so first they're devastated by the, tragedy of having everything destroyed, and then they look out their front window when they're trying to work and rehab their house, and they see people picking through their livelihood, their life's work, their family heirlooms and things like that. So I think we did a good job with that.
I appreciate you being vulnerable and, not only mentioning how it impacted you, but also things you did well, things that were learning opportunities for you that you said were maybe mistakes that you wouldn't let happen again. And I think that that is so important when we go through hard things, whether it's in our personal or professional lives, to be able to celebrate the wins and understand the things that we did really well, and then to learn and grow from the things that maybe we didn't do so well, and to prepare for the future in a more productive way. Not that you ever hope that something like that will ever happen again, but now because you've been through it, you know how to go through it and will be better prepared. And I think that that makes a really good leader, to be able to look at everything and say, these are the things I did well, and these are the things I'll do better in the future.
I agree.
What does it look like now? Because I am familiar with the storm, and I think this was about a year ago,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, it was just
Um,
over a year ago, September, October of last year. Um, I would say that probably 90% of our residences that could have been rehabbed are rehabbed. I know that we have some that had to be totally demolished, and they're waiting on permits, and they're getting permits. And we have a lot of new builds that are going up in some of the areas. But we're back, as Holmes Beach. As I drove in today, there's a lot of traffic coming out here. All of our visitors are down for Thanksgiving. People, all the rental units that are available are full up. We've got, our businesses are back open. Every business, I'm pretty sure every business that was able to, come back has come back. And that's another thing. When we were going through the first weeks of the storm, we were providing meals for workers, for not just the police department, but for all essential workers that were coming out, for the FPL people that were coming out. I had people from Louisiana come down here and provide free meals for everybody. We had like three or four different groups that came down and brought food, knowing that they needed it. They brought pallets of water, they brought ice. Um, they brought medical and cleaning supplies down, and you have to know when it's time to stop the free and let the businesses to start getting their revenue back. And what we did was we gauged when the businesses were ready to open. And when they were ready to open, then we says, okay, we're gonna stop the, giving away the free food every day, the free meals, and, direct people to the open businesses so that they can get their
mm,
workers paid and get them back to it. We even had Guy Fieri uh, built a food truck for hurricanes,
wow.
a big old food truck trailer thing. And he came out and he provided meals for essential workers, police, fire, everybody that was here on the island. And he was here himself, serving meals. It it was great to see. And he's done this and created, now he's got two of them, and he built them to go to devastated areas, not just here in Florida, but like the fires in California. He'll take his trailers out there. Wherever there's a natural disaster, he intends to go and feed the first responders and make sure that they're taken care of with some hot meals.
Um, that's great. I actually didn't know that. We talked about this a little bit earlier about proactive wellness, proactive measures. And I know that prior to this event, you had been prioritizing wellness within your organization, and there were things that you did that you had talked to me about, checking in on your people. You talked about the lunches that you do together, the culture that you're creating, holding everyone to the same standard. If you have any other things that you've done organizationally, I'd love if you'd share. But how do you think that proactiveness and that investment in the wellness of your people helped prepare for an incident like this? Do you feel like because you put in that legwork early that you were better to process, and your team was better equipped to be able to get through something like this?
Yeah, I think that they were, and I think that they realized that since I'm here with them, it's not like I'm just telling them, "Hey, you go do this," but
Mm,
I'm there with them in the field and getting things done, and they see that I'm there, and they realize that if I'm out there, being able to do this, then they're going to be able to do it as well. And we have a good camaraderie. We have great morale at the agency here, and everybody helps each other out when there's a need. And even when Helene first came through and Milton came through, uh, when the officers had damage to their house, we sent the teams that were coming out here to help us. They wanted to go, the first thing they wanted to do was go to the officers' houses and make sure the officers' houses are taken care of, and that their property has been taken care of, and that their families are taken care of. So we did that the first couple days when the teams were here. So that helped my guys to know that, hey, I know I have to be at work, but it's like all the things that have to happen at my house too are taken care of. My family's good. And if their family's good, then they feel better about coming to work, and knowing that everything's been taken care of for them. So it worked out very well.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I know we're kind of button up on time here, but I did want to ask you one final question, and it is for the younger generation. We know that the younger men and women in this career are going to be the future leaders in this profession. And my question for you is, what words of wisdom would you share with them? Someone who's earlier in their career, maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Never stop learning, never stop getting educated, never stop going to your classes that you can go to advance you in your job. Uh, Stay in an agency, trying to make the agency better. I tell my son-in-law that when I was at Bradenton, I didn't like the culture of some of the leadership. So in order to change that, I became a corporal, then a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, deputy chief, to change the culture. If you're in an agency and you're not happy with the culture, work to change it. Better yourself, do the things that you think should be done and how you think it should be done. Make sure that you're being ethical in everything that you do, and get yourself to a position where you can take over leadership and change the culture of an organization from within. You don't have to leave an agency to go to another one. It's not always greener on the other side. I've seen a lot of people that have gone from one agency to another. I've got a buddy of mine that went through 5, 6 different agencies, and he's going to still be working because if you keep moving agency to agency, your pensions aren't always transferable unless you have a state pension and you go from one state pension to another. Uh, like City of Braden is a separate pension. Holmes Beach has its own pension plan. Sheriff's Department has a state pension plan. So you have to make sure that your time is well spent so that when you go to your 20 years, your 30 years, that you've built on a pension that'll help you sustain your life going forward and give you the money that you need. And make ethical decisions. Like I said earlier, make sure that nothing you do is going to make you a headline in a negative article in your local paper. That you'll be embarrassed that your family would read, that your kids go to school and the kids at school say, I read about your dad,
Yeah.
or your mom. It's like, and that's something that would be traumatic to your family, to your parents. Treat people like you'd like them to treat your wife or your husband when you pull them over. Show them the respect that you would want your family to be shown if they had a traffic stop or had an encounter with law enforcement. Those are the important things.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, for your words of wisdom. I really appreciate you coming on here today.
And I appreciate you reaching out and doing what you do, because it helps for other leaders to hear what different leaders are doing in this field and how they go about things. It's educational. It helps for future leaders to get some knowledge.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll stay in touch for sure.
Definitely.